Today is the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and there's obviously this is a heavy day. There's a lot to think about. There's a very powerful lesson that we have to learn from all this, and in certain ways it connects to the parsha this week of B'Shalach. The fact is that the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created the world is that humanity divides itself into groupings. It's been a history. It's been history and so forth. And in a certain way, you could say it's inherent in our DNA. That's why I refer to creation or whatever. In the sense that we have family groupings, and we form families that mean that there is no general sense of we're all human beings, but we also have divisions into families. That division of humanity into groupings is a reality that has existed throughout history. It also raises certain ethical issues or issues of what is right and wrong. There's a rabbi from the 19th century, Rabbi Ben, who wrote a book. He was from Italy and so forth. He wrote a book on Judaism, Christianity, with some comments about Islam as well. And it's a very powerful book on the differences between Judaism and Christianity and so forth. He himself was actually a very fascinating guy. He was actually Makubal. He had his viewpoint on Christianity in certain ways, in terms of Jesus or Yoshua, whatever, is that he was taught Kabbalah and distorted it or whatever. So in many ways he sees within Christianity the distortions of Kabbalah. It's a very interesting book. You can actually get it from Amazon because it's no longer copyrighted, and you can get it like for $12 from Amazon. His name is Ben Zamoga, Benzamogeh, I think. Anyways, but one of the things he points out is that one of the issues that Christianity had with Judaism was nationalism, in the sense that Christianity promoted the universality of mankind. All human beings are equal. All human beings are part of the human grouping, and therefore all human beings should have access to quote-unquote salvation. And that's a very fundamental aspect of Christianity.
But Islam's like that also, isn't
what?
it? Isn't Islam also like that?
Islam also has that aspect, in the sense that Islam is much more universal.
From the religion that isn't, other than like white racist Christianity.
The point is that no. The truth is that there are divisions. The fact is that the monotheistic religions, Christianity and Islam, did say basically the religion applies to all human beings and makes the division between believers and non-believers. So the Muslim distinction is not based upon nationality, it's based upon do you believe or not believe. Christianity also makes that distinction. When they speak about themselves as the new Israel, basically they're creating the new Israel is a group of believers. and any person could be part of that grouping. The fact is, though, if you look in the ancient world had their religions tied to nationality. So that's why the Greeks had their gods and the Egyptians had their gods, and you had differences and so forth and so forth.
So there was never really
what?
So there was never really like a universal religion
in the ancient world.
I mean, I'm sure when the Greeks took over.
Well, the Greeks pushed Hellenism and tried to get people to become Hellenists and so forth.
But only after taking over the country.
Right, but there was no. But the fact is, this is one of the reasons in that kind of world that you had slavery. The fact is, the Romans made that there was a distinction.
Well, it's interesting. The Egyptian gods.
Right. The fact is that what you're getting to is the ancient world worked with nations, and the gods were the gods of the nations. And what Torah presented was the universal God. Kadosh Baruch Hu is the universal God, the creator of all mankind, and therefore the God of humanity. And yet, what Judaism did, what Torah did, is distinguish one nation. And what I'm saying is that Christianity challenged that, because it was against the concept of universal humanity and so forth. The point is,
you say you can be a Jew and a non-Jew and both be good.
Yeah, we have an aspect, but that's exactly it. The truth of the matter is that we have an aspect of a Noahide, and an aspect of we say that the Chassidei Umas Ha'olam, the righteous of the world, can also get Olam Haba, right? So the point is we don't distinguish between Jew and non-Jew in terms of the potential for a certain aspect of relationship with Kadosh Baruch Hu, but on the other hand, we do. Not in terms of the aspect of this relationship, but the fact is that we do make a distinction between Jew and non-Jew, which is a nationalistic distinction based upon the fact that the universal God made a distinction between peoples. And Christianity challenged that. And the fact is that it raises an issue of how we understand Jewish identity. Because the fact is that how the universal God relates to a specific people, specifically, let's say, the nation of Israel, is something that needs explanation. Okay, when we talk about Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim, that you've chosen us from all the nations and so forth, the point is, what is the distinction between Jew and non-Jew? And that is a very real issue. And the reason I'm bringing this up now, the reason I think about this on the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, is because the Nazis in Machshamam basically said that they were special, that they are a special nation. They're better than everyone else.
It bothers me when I talk to people who I guess don't have a religious mindset. They'll look at religion as the idea of Judaism is more of a like a tradition. It's not based on religion. And they'll say people who are half Jewish, people who are connected with Israel, people like the definition. They blur the definition of what a Jew is, which bothers me. That's precisely one of the reasons they say it's because Hitler, it didn't matter if you were really a Jew.
The fact is that's an important question, but the first question is what does the distinction matter? In other words, in Halacha, there's an idea of a Jewish nation, and then there's an idea of what is necessary to be a member of the Jewish nation. But the first step is the fact that you've distinguished the nation. You said this nation is distinct. And the question exists is, why does the universal God distinguish a certain people? And what I'm trying to say is that post-Holocaust, this becomes a very powerful question, because we see we experience the devastation of a group who said that they were different. They also said they were better. So the point is if you look at Nazism, Nazism was saying we're the best, and then everyone else was secondary, and then there's some people who are really negative, and that's where you get Jews.
Liberalism is saying the same thing.
Well, no, the fact that liberalism says we're universal. Liberalism says all human beings are equal, and basically attacks people who say that distinguishing people is bad. Okay? I mean, one of the reasons you have issues is that if you are a nationalist, okay, the question really comes down to, and this was Christianity's argument against Judaism, is that Judaism also had to favor nationalism. It's very interesting that when we talk about humanity, what's the Hebrew term we talk about when we talk about humanity?
Goy?
How do we refer to humanity? The Shivim Amamim, the 70 nations. Nationality is an important part of Judaism. Not just Jewish nationality, but we see nations as separate things. We talk about a malach for each nation.
Right.
We talk about different nations. And the fact is that in Judaism we see a value in nationhood.
That's associated characteristics.
That's an aspect of nationhood. The point is that how does nationhood connect to universalism? So the point is, and this is what Rabbi Zamoga points out, is the fact is that the way humanity works breaks down into nations. The question that exists is, how do you understand this from a moral, ethical perspective? If all human beings are equal, right, and there's a humanity, then why did it break up into nations? And therefore you have entities in the world that believe in just a humanity. Let's all just be human beings. We don't need nations, because nations is a form of groupings, and groupings create friction between people. So the point is that if you didn't have nations, you wouldn't have wars. Because
we'd still have wars.
Well, let's see where the Rabbi's point is.
You only have wars because you have groupings. If we're all one big happy family, there's no wars.
You're not going to live happy family.
Civil war.
That's because the Civil War, but within
subgroupings.
Yeah, Civil War just creates groupings. The point is that when you break down the groupings, then you have issues. So the truth is, when you talk in terms of liberalism, when you talk in terms of that, the point is the argument of many individuals is that let's get rid of the groupings, and you won't have battles between the groups. Let's all just be one bigger group, and we can all interrelate. So the truth is that that's an underlying perspective. The point is Christianity was very much part of that concept when Christianity argued the fact that all human beings are good, but all human beings should be under one religious definition or whatever. And Christianity had other issues where it didn't really care that much about this world. Therefore, it didn't really care about the battles in this world in a certain level. But the point is that Torah creates nations. Torah has created the Jewish nation, and said that this Jewish nation is the Am HaNivchar, the chosen nation. It's unique in its relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And then it also sees aspects of nationality. Okay, even outside of other aspects of nationhood, not just there's a Jewish nation, but there's nationality. So the point is that the ethical question is what is the values of these groupings? What's the value of nationhood? Okay, in other words, why don't we just all get along? Why do we have nationhood, which creates a separation between people? because there's this aspect of grouping. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. If a kid in North Bay needs a major operation, what happens to that kid? Kid in North Bay has a major operation. What happens?
He comes to Toronto, goes down to the States.
No, doesn't go down to the States. That family doesn't have any money.
Yeah, he goes to Toronto.
Where in Toronto does he go?
Whatever, sick kids.
Sick kids. Sick Kids is one of the best children's hospitals in the world. You're born in North Bay. You have no money, right? Okay, you have a free ticket to Sick Kids. Okay? Now, you have a kid born in, what do you call it? Guyana, right? Okay? And this, with the same disease. What happens to that kid?
He probably dies.
So the truth is, that kid doesn't have the opportunity to get to Sick Kids. Because why does that kid in North Bay have the opportunity to get to Sick Kids?
He's in a system that allows for social...
He's Canadian.
Because he's Canadian.
Yeah.
And therefore he's part of a group and says, this group, we take care of our group.
Right.
The kid somewhere else, they're not Canadian. Okay, so therefore you don't do it. Now in Canada, we pay for health. I know that my brother-in-law, who has told me that in his organization Vahafta, they did a trip somewhere, and they were given a free operation at Sick Kids. In other words, they could find in this mission they had, they could find one kid that that Sick Kids or whoever else would pay for all the expenses for this one kid in terms of health needs and so forth. And he told me that one of the hardest decisions they had to make was that there were a couple kids who both could have used some kind of thing, and they had to choose which one, because they had one free pass. So who are they going to give it to? And that's a really tough decision. If those two kids were from Ontario, they both go to Sick Kids. So the truth is, nationalism creates divisions among humanity. And the Torah accepts the concept of nationalism, and then it also creates an idea of a special Jewish nation. And the point is nationalism has been under attack by individuals. Christianity attacked nationalism. That was one of its early attacks on Judaism. It basically said, why are you separating humanity? Okay? God is for all human beings. The point is that in the post-Holocaust era, we have to be concerned about nationalism as well, because the essence of Nazism was extreme nationalism.
Right.
That's what they were about. To the extent that they'd say we're better than everyone else, and then they also had other groupings that they defined as even less so. So the Jews were the worst, you know. And you know something? There's something I read years ago. It was in the Globe and Mail, and I should have kept this. I should have kept this article. It's an article on Mengele. Okay, Yimach Shemo Zichro. The evil doctor at Auschwitz. And Mengele said that the reason you had to go after the Jews was because there are two powerful nations in the world, the Germans and the Jews, and if we don't get them, they'll get us. Okay? Which was a fascinating statement. So Mengele basically said the reason we gotta go get the Jews is because he really thinks they're a very powerful nation. They're very, very special. But if we don't get them, they'll get us. The truth of the matter is, he was caught up by his nationalism. And the truth is, what? Pardon?
That's happened in Egypt also.
Where in
Egypt.
Back?
Yeah,
right, exactly, exactly. That's why it says that B'Shalach, this parsha is coming up. The fact is that yet, when we left Egypt, what are we constantly being told in the Torah? Remember that you were strangers in Egypt, and therefore you have to be somewhat, you want to be nice to the stranger, so you don't act like because the Egyptians because you were strangers in Egypt, you should be sensitive to the other. So the point is that the Torah obviously recognizes there's issues with this separation of groupings. There's also a reason for it, because the Torah believes in nationality. So that's why it's a time when liberation of Auschwitz and so forth and so forth. I think it's a time to consider what Jewish nationality is about. What is the Torah's value of nationality? And the truth is we have groupings. As human beings, we're expected to have groupings. We have groupings in terms of family and so forth. We have different groupings.
Nationality in regards to the state of Israel, or nationality to our own our homeland, or the country that we're born?
The truth of the matter is it could be any definition of nationality.
Okay.
The fact is that we are told halachically that you have to be sensitive to the nation that you are living in. Right? There's a halachic call to be good Canadians. There's obviously there's a sensitivity to Klal Yisrael as a nation. The point is that the question is why is it that you have a sensitivity to your national grouping?
They're going to kill us.
No, that's the point. The point is they're only going to kill you because you create nations. If you didn't have nations, the argument there wouldn't be any killing, because we'd all be in groups.
So I will say.
See, the point is what I'm trying to say is an argument to say you need a group because they're going to get you. Comes out of the argument that is a grouping. The argument against that, what you would call from liberals or whatever, is the argument that says if you don't have the groupings which separate you, you'll all get along.
Right.
Okay? In other words, the way to coexist is by not creating groupings.
Right. Their idea of coexistence is homogenous versus our idea is coexistence is do your own thing.
No,
everything within a system.
Well, the fact is that our coexistence believes in a coexistence as groupings.
As groups, yeah.
As groupings.
You have the gays, the blacks, the feminists.
But the fact is that. But the point is whatever groupings are, there are definitions of groupings, but the groupings is that there's an understanding of coexistence. See, it's an interesting point. If you look in terms of the tension with communism, communism in the extreme, or socialism extreme, communism extreme, wanted to break down groupings. Even in certain viewpoints, even the breaking down of the family. So you had kibbutzim in Eretz Yisrael, where basically they tried to create it will all be one big happy family, and we'll have the nursery and so forth for all the kids together. They wanted to create a certain group. The fact is, but the point is that the idea and communism, there's also this idea we're all comrades or whatever. The point is that once you start arguing the argument is then you break down individuality. Individuality includes you as an individual, maintaining your individual identity. It also includes groupings. So the truth is that there's a tension between individuals, groupings, and a general humanity feeling, and Torah believes in both.
Well, we have the Shvatim, which had separate land, different borders.
Exactly. The fact is, even within Klal Yisrael, you had groupings and so forth.
But who you give to.
Exactly, because there's a value in groupings.
Right.
Okay, and there's a value in prioritization based upon groupings. But the point is that how do you understand that? How do you understand the idea that that you're going to distinguish? That's why the case I told you in terms of the Ontario kid. The Ontario kid says, listen, we have a grouping called Canadian, Ontario, Ontarian, or whatever you call it, and therefore we work with our grouping. So therefore, for some reason, a kid born in North Bay has benefits by being part of the Canadian group or the Ontario group. Guess what? Is there an inherent difference between them? Well, maybe not as a human being. But the point is we have groupings. The problem is that you have to know what the values of these groupings. And the extreme issue of when you look at someone like Nazism, you look at Hitler, you look at what happened with Nazism, that was an overextension of groupings at the extent where there was no value to universalism whatsoever. And the point is that's why it's such an important lesson for us. In other words, we have to understand that within Torah we have groupings. There's a reason for groupings, and we have to understand that there's also has to be a certain
reason for collectivism.
Well, there is that value of universalism, and there has to be a understanding of the value of the groupings.
So why, when it came to the korbanos for the Gentiles, there was only one specific?
That's a different question. That's a different, because you do have a difference. The fact is, you have a difference between Jews and non-Jews already.
But like, did you have like the Moabite korban, the korban of the Greeks, the korban of the Romans?
No. The fact is that you're right. Non-Jews were put together with a certain definition, but you should know that the Caesar used to send a korban every day to the base of Mikdash.
Right. But even within the Jewish perspective, when Jews look at, when we say Shivim Amim, right? Are we saying, and then you have the distinct, and then when you had Eretz Yisrael, you had the Beis Midrash with the distinction Jews and Gentiles. But within the Gentiles were there Persians.
The fact is that there was a distinction.
Greeks.
There was a distinction. The point is the distinction may not have any aspect in terms of halachic definition. But you're saying, well, there's a distinction between nation and this. The point of the matter is that the Torah distinction made a distinction between the Jewish nation and other nations. Let's say there weren't really other distinctions among the nations from a halachic perspective, but there was a recognition of a distinction in nations. That there were nations. Now there are some halachic distinctions. A Moabite and Ammonite could not come into Klal Hashem. There were limitations on the Moabite and the Ammonite in terms of their ability to integrate into Klal Yisrael if they wanted to convert. There were distinctions based upon nationality, but the fact is that the Torah recognized that there was a concept of nations. So the point is from a Torah perspective, you didn't have an idea that they're all human beings. Yeah, they are all human beings, but we did recognize that human beings form into groupings. Perhaps so that there was an idea that nations were separate. Doesn't necessarily have to be to be halachic defined as separate. There's a concept of separation. So the point is the concept of a country called Canada that's a nation. And from a Torah perspective, we understand a value in nationhood. Okay? Now, what is that value? Now, from a halachic perspective, there's one nation that's distinguished, and that's Klal Yisrael, and that has to be understood as well. So the point is that, yeah, we understand an aspect of nationhood. I was calling me. I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay. Thank you. Okay, there's an aspect of nationhood, but the point is that what I'm trying to get at is that the concept that you see within Torah, without getting into halachic distinctions, that there's a concept that human beings form groupings called nations, and that's the way human beings exist. And there's a concept that nations form groupings. So from a Christian perspective, okay.
What's the difference between the Jewish perspective and the Christian?
Well, in the Christian perspective, they're very much involved in universalism. So in terms of a Christian perspective, the idea that, and I'm talking about just general things just general terms of Christianity, because to apply it in more specific terms is a little bit more problematic and so forth, because you get into the difference between, because Christianity is much more concerned about the future, the next world than this world and so forth. But from a Christian ethical perspective, saying that the child in North Bay has access to sick kids, a child in New Guinea does not have access to sick kids, they sit there and say that's wrong. All human beings should have access to sick kids. So there's a tendency towards a certain aspect of universalism.
So in terms of division, so what would be the Jewish approach to that?
In a Jewish approach, we would basically say there is a concept of nationality. So from our perspective,
so if you had, let's say you had a Jew outside in Gullus and they needed...
don't halakhically, right? Okay, you're saying you have more of a responsibility to a Jew than to a non-Jew.
Okay.
Right, from Stuka, yes. The point is there's a universal aspect to helping out all human beings, but you have a...
confused between what exactly universalism is in regards to Judaism.
Okay.
So why Christianity is...
So, okay, let's understand this. Because I think you're having... because nationality is so significant. So we think nationality is an important value.
Because we feel like there's a limited resources, so if we have our own nationalism, we can flourish within our own system.
Right, and therefore someone outside the system
cannot necessarily benefit because it will ruin the system.
So no. The fact is what you're saying is that if you're part of the group, forget system, talk group. Okay?
You look after the group.
Okay, look after the group and not someone outside the group. Why? That's exactly it. Why should someone outside the group suffer?
Okay, so not having groups. So how would the Christians look at it?
So Christianity, in other words, when Christianity dealt with a lot of things in the beginning of Judaism, and I'm not trying to focus on Christianity here. I'm trying to focus on universalism.
Fine.
Universalism basically says distinctions between people based upon these groupings is not a good thing.
So how would you have like if you only had limited resources, who gets it?
What are the options?
The point is
mine for people like to the front get it.
The fact is that what you're asking is maybe what you say is, you're asking very powerful questions, which get back to, let's say, if you have one bottle of water, two people, who gets it? The point is that but the fact is you're talking humanity. But let's say you have in the States, people say, we're losing American jobs because people in India are getting jobs. Okay? So you can sit there and say, if you consider all human beings to be equal, you can sit there and say, so someone needs to work. What's the difference if it's an American getting a job or an Indian getting a job? Or you basically say, listen, let's look at, and this is where you get into communism. Communism basically says, hey, you know something? There's only limited resources, so you share the pot equally.
And everyone's poor.
And everyone's poor.
Do communists do that like worldwide?
What? Yeah, the Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto was universal
so
idea.
The USSR was like all over.
The USSR would like to expand, take over the entire world.
Oh. But when it was, so it didn't have any boundaries with Ukraine or.
It had part of the Ukraine.
Ukraine was
part of it.
What?
Yeah, but the fact is that ultimately the idea of communism, what happened in real life is hard to say, because who said they really applied communist thing? I mean, the fact is that
what happens in communism is the top dogs usually remain the top dogs, and everybody else.
So the fact is therefore you can look at Animal Farm, and you get into whole issues where communism, never really worked, and the people who pushed it basically just pushed their own agendas and so on. The fact is I'm talking theoretically. Okay. The fact of the matter is that communism says basically split the pie evenly. Okay? And when you start getting into nationality, when people start saying, oh, we're losing American jobs or Canadian jobs, and they're going somewhere else, if you're seeing all human beings as equal, well, Good. So someone else is going to eat. Okay.
Well,
the point is.
Equal, then it's just conservation of job theory.
But the point is that nationalism becomes extremely significant. The point is you have to come up with an explanation of nationalism.
Well, most of the reason that nationalism is so important to people is because of taxes. I'm paying these taxes, I get these benefits. They're not paying these taxes, but they're getting the benefits anyway.
Okay, so that's an outgrowth of the nationalism. But the fact is that if you are if you are a recipient of welfare and you're Canadian, that's fine, right? You don't want but the point is that you're not talking about someone who's paying the taxes. You're talking about someone who's the benefit of taxes, and that people are saying, hey, I'm willing to have someone who's part of my group get the benefits of my paying taxes. I'm not willing to have someone who's not part of my group. But the point is,
I think part of it is also if you have someone who's illegal come to take the jobs, they're not paying
and that's where you get into issues. Well, then they start paying the taxes, and the issue says, so what's wrong with someone illegal if he's paying the taxes, actually keeping the job? So it's another human being who's eating.
And that's where people just
well,
get
the point is,
walk away.
well, no, people basically say, but he's not American. Okay, and the point is so why is that difference? But the fact is that I'm not. Within Torah, we have a universal concept. We have some values of universalism, but Torah also has some values of nationalism. The point is that really what you have to see is, and this is an issue we have of saying, okay, what's the value of nationalism? And I'm just trying to point out that you have to understand this, especially in the shadow of the Holocaust, because one of the major forces of the Holocaust was nationalism. Hitler sold
what they were called.
Right. National Socialist Party. The fact of the matter is, right. But the fact is that what they were pushing was nationalism. And we're taking care of Germans, we don't care about anyone else.
So where do we go from there?
So the point is we have to be very careful, because the truth is the Torah also says there's a value in nationalism.
Right.
And the fact is Klal Yisrael is chosen, as a nation. So the point is the starting point is the recognition that first of all there is individual definitions. So we've talked about it before, and the fact is we have individual responsibilities. We have distinction between individuals. We have individual responsibilities. Right. But the fact is we also have the formation of groupings, family, nation, community. And the fact is that there's a way of relating together in order to develop. Now the point is you can sit there and say this is an aspect of how to learn how to relate together. You know, to row a boat, you have to have the right amount of people rowing the boat.
Right. You
can't put everyone into the boat. So the point is there's a formation of nations. Now people talk about this in terms of Klal Yisrael, in terms of a Kadosh Baruch Hu saying that Am Yisrael is supposed to be a model nation. The Rabbi Ben also develops this idea where it's supposed to be a model nation, and therefore it's a model of how to coordinate individuals together to try and work together towards a common goal. So the point is, if you take all of humanity and say, okay, let's all get together, how do you bring all humanity together? But if you say, hey, listen, we're going to form groupings, and each of these groupings are going to learn how to work together, that's a way of learning how to coordinate, how to develop things. So the point is, and there's an argument that Klal Yisrael is supposed to be a model country. Okay? In other words, the purpose of Eretz Yisrael is not just simply to be a place for Jews and we have our country and we don't care about anyone else. It's that when we develop our country, it will be a model for others to see how to develop a country.
Why? Because we have the Torah.
The Torah gives us a direction of how to live as a country.
That we have with the Torah, right? But what is the model nation? That's what I want.
Okay, so the aspect of the model nation comes down to why were we chosen. So the point is why were we chosen? Why were we chosen as as the model nation? So the point is that you get into considerations of how much are you thinking of yourself as a model to humanity. How much are you thinking of yourself as being a example to the world?
Right.
So you get into situations where there's a lot of argument in terms of Jewish identity that we are to be models for the world. The point is we are supposed to be models as individuals. We're supposed to be models as a nation of how we coordinate ourselves and so forth. And we're also supposed to be an aspect of assist nations. So the point is there are aspects of caring for nations. There's aspects of giving tzedakah to non-Jews or whatever. There's the aspect of being sensitive to everything else. But the only thing is, we recognize that the way to do it within the human system is by forming groupings. And we are chosen as a nation to be the nation that is supposed to be, when they say Mamlechas Kohanim B'Goy Kodesh, the fact is Mamlechas Kohanim is a nation of priests. What did the priests do? The priests' function was to serve the nation. We are a nation that is to serve the world, but to serve the world as a model nation. Okay, so the point is that in terms of our own self-development and developing the idea, and that makes a very strong difference from us as a national entity. We're not just a national entity we are a national entity, therefore we serve the interests of our nation, because that's what nationality is about. But the idea of being a national entity is also to be a model national entity so the world can benefit from us and can learn from us. So the fact is there's a universal aspect to it. So the point is, and this is something that Rabbi Ben Zamoga points out, in the sense that our nationalism is not selfish. It's not totally self-serving. Nationalism is a way of living, and the way we live is through this idea of being models and developing things.
Nationalism, the strength that we focus on is the fact that there is division. There is.
The point is that, but the same with groupings. The point is that we have groupings in terms of family and so forth. So you have the idea that as individuals you care for others. As family, and when we form families, we also, the part of the family is to be considerate of others. But there's also the idea of being family oriented. The fact is that there's a development of that the point is that makes a big difference. Nationalism has a tremendous problem in the sense that it can lead to a lack of sensitivity to the universal.
Right.
And that's what you really saw with the Holocaust. That's what you really saw in a certain way with the Nazis. The Nazis. What?
There's psychopaths.
Okay, so, and it's connected to the fact of a nationalism that is totally taken to the extreme of having no consideration for universalism.
But like the next step would be to ask, so how does the Torah look at universality and balance universality and nationalism? How does it incorporate the two?
That's a constant question that we are to consider.
And how do you have a Gentile living in a Western society?
Okay, so the fact is that is an issue. The truth is that when you look in terms of the halachas of Ger Toshav, which in many ways, which is not a Jew. In many ways, when you look at certain halachas, which we refer to as a Ger Toshav, a Ger Toshav is a non-Jew who lives in Eretz Yisrael. In order to live in Eretz Yisrael, he has to observe the Noahide code. In other words,
he doesn't have like a head tax or anything.
No, but a lot of times when we think in terms of conversion, conversion is really a misnomer to explain the Jewish attitude to non-Jews integrating with the Jewish people and so forth. Conversion implies a religious term that implies that you are changing your faith. The fact is from a Jewish perspective or from a Torah perspective, the non-Jew is already expected to be sharing your faith. Because a Noahide, being a Noahide, you should have the same religious belief as the Jew. Right? Okay, so the Noahide could have the exact same beliefs as a Jew. The Noahide just is difference. What's his difference? It's really nationality. So when we talk about Gerus is not really conversion. Gerus is really immigration. How does a non-Jew become part of the Jewish nation? Okay? And to do that, he already has to be a believing individual. He has to believe in Torah Sinai. Okay, a Noahide can be totally, it should believe in Torah Sinai. According to the Rambam, in order to be a to be a person who is considered to be a righteous Gentile, you have to accept the fact that you're following the Noahide code because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is mitzvah to this. So that has to be an aspect of revelation. So therefore, when you talk about a non-Jew quote unquote converting to Judaism, that's really a misnomer. It's a non-Jew immigrating into the Jewish nation from a halakhic perspective.
So in terms of freedom of religion in Israel under Bezdin, what is that a
that you're jumping ahead, because the fact is you're now going to deal with the world where there's issues in our world, but you're just talking from a halakhic perspective. Okay, Yeshua, where there's no doubt, we talked about this, last week. When Yeshua comes in, there's no doubt that Kadosh Baruch Hu is there. All the non-Jews know about God. They all know about that. So the fact is you're a non-Jew, and you can stay in the land if you follow the Noahide code.
Right.
Then there's a certain status. This is what the status of Ger Toshav is. Ger Toshav would be the same as a green card in the United States. A person who's not a citizen is allowed to live in the land. It would be, what's the term here in Canada? A landed immigrant. Landed immigrant. You're not a citizen, but you're allowed to live in the ground, and you have all the rights of citizenship. So the Ger Toshav is a non-Jew who lives in the nation of the Jews, lives in the Jewish nation, and he has almost all the rights of Jewish citizens.
But isn't it still a two-tier system? If you have a choice between, like again, it goes under what people would say is like discrimination. So if you have a choice between hiring a Jew or hiring a Ger Toshav,
what's the law in Canada? You have a choice between hiring a citizen and hiring a landed immigrant.
In theory, have the choice, but you're not supposed to.
Okay, so in terms of a Ger Toshav, who says that the Ramban, if you look at the Ramban statement in his Adam Sefer, he seems to imply Ger Toshav has all the rights of a Jew.
You can't
You have to give him staka.
You can't give him
no. All the rights of a Jew. Got to give him staka. You got to support him as much as you support a Jew. That's the way the Ramban understands the Ger Toshav.
What about the whole thing with the slave, the Jewish slave versus
That's a different law.
Right.
You have to understand the distinctions. The Ger Toshav,
slave by definition has less rights.
Right. The Ger Toshav, if you look in the Ramban and his Sefer Mitzvahs, the Ger Toshav has almost all the rights to the Jew. You got to give him staka. You have the mitzvah of keeping him alive. Okay. The fact is now there could be limitations on it, yeah. But the fact is, you look at it through halachically. But the Ger Toshav, when you start talking two-tier system, because within the grouping, it's the same as a person in the States with a green card.
Right.
He has a green card. He's still not a citizen. When Charlie Chaplin left the States. Okay, I think it was in the 1950s, he left the States. He never was a citizen of the U.S. He had a green card. He left the States, and when he tried to come back, he was barred entry. Because having a green card does not give you the right to live in the States. An American citizen has that right. A person with a green card can always have his right to revoke.
How did Charlie Chaplin get his rights revoked?
Because Charlie Chaplin was challenged in the whole McCarthy era. Charlie Chaplin was very much of a liberal, so they basically challenged. That's why in the 70s they had a special night for Charlie Chaplin with the Oscars. He came back and Hollywood and crazy. But the fact is that the truth is that Chaplin was a very political figure. I mean, look at the great dictator. He mocked Hitler. I mean, he was a very interesting figure.
Hitler took his mustache.
Anyways, the point is that so the point is, but at the same point in time, you might be right. The Ger Toshav does not have the same rights, may not have 100% the same rights as a Jew, the same way as a landed immigrant does not have the same rights as a citizen.
Well, I mean,
right?
Even if they have the same rights, there's still the innate nationalism of people to give them less
same way as citizens are different than but the point is that all comes across from the fact that you have a concept of nation.
But if you're not a Ger Toshav, you're in trouble.
The fact is Ger Toshav Noachad. The truth is that this was in the time when there were Bati Dinim. Basically, this was the quote unquote immigration process. If you were a non-Jew staying in a Jewish land, you'd go through Ger Toshav, because the same way someone here would want to be a landed immigrant.
What about like original? Like there were some tribes when Israel conquered when they conquered Israel, when the Jews conquered Israel, going in, there were some nations that were still around, where they weren't fully Ger Toshav, or they were. Like, how did they get about Zara?
They couldn't. The fact is that was Israel totally successful in conquering the land?
They weren't.
No, that's exactly it. So you're asking a theoretical question.
No, what was not? No.
They're not.
Back in the time of Tanakh, like when they conquered.
They're not Ger Toshav, because the fact of the matter is Israel. They didn't have a full conquest of the land. You're talking about a nation. So if, let's say, you're sitting there and saying, okay, like they you come in and you conquer land, but we didn't conquer Prince Edward Island. So the people in Prince Edward Island, are they Canadians? Well, they're not part of Canada. So the point is that the nations, if Yeshua came in and there was a place that wasn't conquered, well, they're not part of the nation. In other words, you have to look at it from a country and nation perspective. Okay, so in terms of the nation, you have to see it from a political perspective. You can't sit there and say, hey, there's this person over here. Well, where does he live?
So what went down in the times of Tanakh, the times of Fri Jun, where they had massive Avodah Zarah, they had temple prostitutes, what
was the nation? What was the country?
Wasn't it a nation and country?
Under halacha. Under halacha. They have it under halacha. In other words, you're saying like who? What court? Who was the government? Who was the political government?
They didn't have political government?
Who was in charge?
Who?
In other words, you're throwing out statements, and I'm looking at this and saying, tell me the governmental political statement.
Okay, well, this is where my ignorance lies, and where I guess it needs to be.
So the fact is, what you're dealing with
I'm asking questions.
Right. Okay. So what I'm saying is, this phrase is a question. The fact is that if you look back in terms of Bayis Sheni, right? What was the government during Bayis Sheni? Well, for many years, it was under Greek rule, right? It was under Persian rule, then Greek rule. Right? Yeah, they had Bayis Sheni, but it was under Greek rule.
What about the times of David?
David is way before Bayis Sheni. So in David's time, now you're talking about a Jewish government.
Right.
Yes. So in the time of David, right? Shlomo, there were Ger Toshav. This was the court system. They had an immigration legal system, and the immigration legal system had a status which was similar to landed immigrant.
What was the whole thing with Avodah Zarah? Where did that come from?
What Avodah Zarah exists in the time of David?
There's no Avodah Zarah in the time of David.
Do you have David? Tolerating Avodah Zarah?
What about his sons? How did they have Avodah Zarah?
So did Shlomo tolerate Avodah Zarah?
What about Yerovam? Not Yerovam.
Yeah. So afterwards, there were people who started taking over. Once you had Yerovam, he wasn't being a Jew. He was not applying Torah law to his kingdom. Right. So the fact is that, hey, it was like, it's like saying, listen, in the United States, during the Civil War, the President of the United States had an Emancipation Declaration which freed the slaves. Okay? Guess what? In the Confederacy, they didn't apply that law. That's right, because it was a different country.
So
they said we're not bound by that law because we're the Confederate States.
So here all that those were times. So when they were under, so where they were actually under Greek rule, they weren't actually. So there's a very small window when there was actually a Jewish homeland that was entirely Jewish and Jewish run.
Yeah, David Shlomo.
That wasn't under occupation.
No, but in addition to being run, was it being run al pi Torah, and then you had Yeramim and Nevat having a Jewish country that was not being run al pi Torah and included Avodah Zarah.
How that ever happened?
That's something. Read the text. See how they got it. The fact of the matter is that's why when you had a king who was a person who followed Torah, he basically clamped down on Avodah Zarah. So I'm sure there were a lot of people who basically became afraid of the law and stopped practicing Avodah Zarah because they get into trouble for breaking the law.
Right.
I mean, you have to see the situation. But what I'm getting at is that the Jewish world had a value in nationalism, because there's a value in groupings, and the value in groupings has to coexist with universalism, and that's a tension we're constantly working with. And the point is that what I was getting at is that in the post-Holocaust era, we have to be sensitive to that, because that overextension of nationalism it was basically the evil of the Nazis.
So how can we be sensitive to that? Like, what's the practical?
What is the perfect balance according to the Jewish perspective?
The point is that it's always hard to come up with a balance, because the balance is always dependent upon situations and so forth and so forth. But the point is you have to keep in mind that you have rights as a group, right? That there is as an individual, as a group, you have rights, and you also have to be aware of the rights of others. But the point is that there's an idea that you have a value in considering what you need and what your group needs, and you have to be considerate of others. But I think one of the big things about the Jewish perspective is the fact that we always have to be recognizing that we are a model. So when we form groupings, our groupings is also supposed to be a model to others, that when they form their groupings. So if one of the things about groupings is that we work to benefit each other. It's like a team. Let's say like a sports team, right? If a sports team is learning to play the game really well and they're coming together as a sports team, then they become a model of how a team works. So the other teams look and say, gee, that's the way you're supposed to play, because they're learning how to work. But that sports team that's doing it is going to be winning as a team. Right? You have to understand that part of what you have to do is to accomplish the goals of what your grouping's trying to do. But then you have to be considerate. So the truth is that that's part of the challenge in terms of balancing it out. But the fact is that seems to be, like, you look in terms of the Jewish models, you're talking in terms of David HaMelech or Shlomo Melech. Shlomo Melech was a very successful king. Israel at the time was a very wealthy nation. It was a very powerful nation, right? The point is that he demonstrated what you can do as a grouping, acting correctly, and in his mind, it was not I'm going to accomplish this at your expense. I'm doing my thing, and hopefully you can do it as well. So, for example, let's say, for the Marshal talks about this in V'ahavta L'reacha Kamocha. He says that part of V'ahavta L'reacha Kamocha is the fact that you recognize the other person's desires for himself or herself. So the point is you act in your interest, because you're aware of your needs and what you want to do. And your consideration of the other is you are respectful of the other person's desire to accomplish. So there's a difference. There's a difference between looking at other nations and saying they're there to serve me, versus we're pulling together to try and do a good thing, and we'd like to teach you how for you guys can pull together to do a good thing. And the truth is, you hear this also in terms of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael says we'd love to teach you, to Samaria, we'd love to teach you how to accomplish goals as a nation. Right. So we need to have the aspect of we want to teach you how to act as a group. You know what I mean? The point is that it's not that I only want the steak for me. It's like halavai, everyone should get the steak. Halavai, everyone learns how to do this and so forth. The point is that's an aspect of moving forward. The point is that groupings can be where you are only concerned about the group, and you see others as being inferior, and therefore or only having a purpose for the group, right? You know what I mean? And that was the way the ancient world was with slaves. Basically, there's a group, and everyone else was there just to serve the group, right? That's why. That's
recently, about 70 years ago.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The truth is that the Nazis, they were even worse than that, because they didn't even want.
No, they were pretty efficient. They used people that they could for work.
The fact is that there's a very powerful scene in Schindler's List where there was a woman, a Jewish woman, who was an engineer, and she said, "You're going about this all wrong." And the Nazi in charge, heard her, and then she says, "I'm an engineer. I got this degree. I could be of real service to you." And he basically shot her, killed her. Because the idea was, no, I don't need you at all, because that was part of their consciousness. But the truth of the matter is, in the ancient world, the ancient world basically, when they went places, they wanted slaves, because they wanted to use others for the benefit. The truth is that what we are told is to have a certain aspect of respect for others. So the point is that we have an aspect of helping other people and so forth. So our nationalism is not there's only us and everyone else is irrelevant to us, or is there only to serve us. Our nationalism is we're to be a model for you, right, and you can learn from us how to bring your group together.
Or we'd help others by helping ourselves, then be able to help others.
Right.
So that's one of the benefits of capital, or our society, because we have the wealth to help others, which we do.
But also the fact is that one of the things we want to teach is how you as a group can come together, right, to benefit the members of the group. Which is an aspect of it, and that's very much part of the Jewish consciousness. Right? Any questions? Okay.
Well, one question. What role do the other nations play that we're trying to bring them together? What do we need them for?
The fact is that because there's a value in all humanity.
Yeah, we have to.
We are
all of our creatures. We have to respect them.
Right. So the fact is that in the end, we want humanity to make it. Okay. I mean that's our ultimate goal. Okay, but the way
to do that
through group work, and the fact is that in a certain way, it's a unity of groupings, is what Klal Yisrael really, what I think Torah believes in, and the truth is that it doesn't just, it's not just individuals or whatever, but it comes from individuals forming families. The fact is that the way we have, if you look at the world forms groupings in terms of families, and then families come together to form communities, and communities come together to form nations, and nations come together to form a world community. And that really should be the way we come together.
So if it's our role to lead the other countries, the other nations or the groupings, then
Yeah. That's
by
really
example, not takeover.
In many ways. The fact of the matter is that that's what we are about. Okay, but the big thing is that we see a value in group formation. It's part of the human condition. We form groups.
So what is it about the Jewish nation that sees value in nationhood, and what is it about the Jewish nation that sees value in individualism?
So that's a Torah perspective. I mean, that comes from the balancing of Torah. So the point is that you get into an issue you can get into what is the psychology of the Jews that distinguish them, that they become the recipients of Torah. But the fact is that what distinguishes us is ultimately Torah. Okay, that we have a blueprint for how to balance out these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy to come to that recognition. The fact of the matter is that it's sometimes it's really a difficult challenge in knowing how to balance your own needs with the needs of others and so forth. But the fact is that and I say this before, and I think that one of the important considerations we have is recognition of the value of nationalism, and the fact that we saw the evil of nationalism through the Nazis, who specifically targeted the Jews as their for their evil. It's really an indication that their nationalism was only self-serving. But the point is that we stand for a nationalism, but it's a nationalism that has a universal consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's very, very very powerful within Jewish consciousness, and universalism, ignoring the fact of reality of human groupings, has weaknesses. There's a reality that humans need to form groupings.